Herzlich willkommen, liebe Cap Insider, zu einem neuen Video bei uns auf den Social Media Kanälen und auf capinside.com. Und ja, Sie haben es vielleicht in der Zeile schon gelesen. Es geht noch einmal in einem Special um den Ukraine-Konflikt und die Auswirkungen auf den Finanzsektor. Natürlich sprechen wir darüber mehr von der finanziellen Seite als von der humanitären. Natürlich sind wir uns klar, dass das nach wie vor auch eine humanitäre Krise ist. Aber hier wollen wir speziell auf den Finanzmarkt und den Finanzsektor schauen. Und ich freue mich sehr auf einen Gast heute hier bei uns, Fredrik von Knorring, Deputy CEO at Fondita. So a great welcome to Fredrik von Knorring, Deputy CEO at Fondita.
Thank you, Matthias. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we want to talk about the Ukraine-Konflikt, but before we have to say something about Fondita, maybe it's a Finnish asset manager based in Helsinki. You have 8 stock funds. They have 800 million euro assets under management. And you manage long only equity funds and specializes in European and Nordic equities. And with a particular focus on sustainable companies. Yeah, all right.
Yes.
So that's only for the company, for Fondita. And let's talk about the situation. It's another situation like here in Germany. Finland has its own history with Russia and their own independence and shares a border with Russia. So what is the position, the mood in Finnish politics and society about Ukraine-Russian conflict? What do you think?
Well, of course, I mean, this is a very sad conflict from a humanitarian perspective, and I'm deeply troubled, by the suffering that normal people are experiencing, and I think this very much reflects the feelings here in Finland among people. I mean, the sadness of seeing a tragedy of this scale in the heart of Europe. And it is true that we do have a long history and we share a long border with Russia, and of course we're following the situation closely and hope for a de-escalation of the conflict as soon as possible. And the stance here is to try to help as much as possible. I mean, with humanitarian aid, but to also stand firm with the West and show resolve.
Yeah. All right. So how do you assess the economic impact of the sanctions issued so far? So it's for Finland too. Which scenarios do you expect for it?
Well, for sure. I mean, we have seen some of the most potent sanctions to date being implemented, and I don't know. There could be more to come ahead, and for sure they'll hurt the economy both in the short and the long term. So, I mean, at this point, of course, it's difficult to see the complete full outcome, but I think these sanctions are especially hurting the Russian economy and the financial sector. And I think the ordinary Russian will feel the effects through, rising prices, inflation, scarcity of goods. And the market is now, of course, trying to price these sanctions and the effects on companies. And I think a lot are also looking to the central banks. What will the central bank policies be affected? Will we see rate hikes? And I think the question is how these central banks will navigate the situation where rising energy prices could increase inflation, but where we see a risk of recession and stagflation. I mean, could this turn central banks away from rates hikes? And I think it's in Europe it's more difficult to see the ECB raising rates at this time, and I think we could be looking at a situation where we see fewer rate hikes than expected, or a smaller tightening than expected. And I think a big task now for central banks is to secure, the economic growth, stability, liquidity, and I don't think we want to see a recession. But of course, the risk is raised in that regard. But I think they're hitting hard, and this is a big arsenal that has already been pulled out, and to date really potent restrictions.
Yeah. Let's talk about the European energy distribution. It's a hot topic these days. We know all about that. We in Germany import huge amounts of oil and natural gas from Russia. This is a fact. What do you think could be the outcomes for the European energy supply in the future, or should Europe become more independent from its suppliers?
Yes, I do. I think Europe should be more independent. with regards to energy, and I think the dependency is high, and this is definitely not helping the current situation to have this high dependency. And if you look at the European energy mix, it's a question that has long before been debated, and we are seeing a growing demand for transitioning away from fossil fuels towards renewables. And if anything, this current situation is, with rising energy prices and heavy reliance on Russian imports, will probably speed up this transition. And we have seen this trend happening already, and I think this current situation is pushing it quicker in that direction. And Europe should, of course, be more self-sufficient when it comes to energy. And with that said, we'll probably create the possibility to move further with renewables and invest in non-fossil solutions.
Yeah.
And we've set many high goals. I think many countries in Europe have really ambitious goals when it comes to emissions. And looking at Germany, I think the goal is to be CO2 neutral by 2035. And this really requires to step up the game in this area. And And we at Fondita, we have positioned ourselves with this transition in mind already in 1998. So when we started looking at this theme, so we think this could speed us up quicker towards that goal. But yes, I do believe we should have more independence when it comes to energy.
Yeah, it will be an interesting point for the next years, I think. Yeah,
yes, for sure
have to do this. Yeah, let's look at the other part. MSCI considers ejection of Russia from indices. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund is also launching a divestment strategy. Do you think is the Russian economy in a sell-off? Which effects do you predict?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. There is a pressure to sell, and I think the Russian stock market has been closed, and it might still be closed today, and so for sure, negative consequences, and it will take a really long time to normalize. But as you mentioned, the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund is looking to divest, and other examples, BP and Shell have also announced intentions regarding their reduction in Russian exposure and holdings. And many companies. An example here from Finland is we have a large tire manufacturer called Nokian Tires, which has large production facilities in Russia, and they're now looking to move these to Finland and also the US. So I mean, there for sure there's pressure to sell, and much, of course, now depends on the duration of the conflict.
How quick is this possible? What do you think? How quick? What will this process need of time?
Well, I mean, of course, at this stage, it's hard to say, and again, it might not be so easy to divest, and at this point in time, and I think a lot of funds have been frozen that are investing into Russia at the moment. But of course, it depends on the duration. But I think to normalize this situation will take time.
Yeah. So Fondita is investing in many European companies. How are you and your investment strategy responding to the current developments? What are you changing, maybe?
Well, I mean, we're stock pickers, and we're looking for companies through a fundamental bottom-up approach. So in our process, when we're selecting stocks, we're looking for companies in structurally changing markets. We have three themes that we have been looking at since 1998, which is digitalization, environment and climate, as well as demography. And as I mentioned before, the transition away from fossil could very well accelerate this and strengthen our belief that the environment and renewables is a sector worth being in the long term. And when looking at our portfolios, we don't really have any exposure to Russia or the Russian markets. I mean, if we look at on an aggregated turnover level in our portfolios, we're talking about a number short of 1%. So this is something that has been the situation actually for a long time, and we have a minimal exposure to the Russian market where we've seen risks for a long time. And this can also be said for the Finnish economy as a whole. I mean, our exposure to Russia has become much smaller during the last decade. So for us as stock pickers, we stick to our themes and when investing, and we're looking for companies that fulfill our requirements and are good long-term investments.
Yeah. All right. To make Fondita strong for the future with this conflict. Yeah. All right.
Well, of course, I mean, it's a sad conflict, but looking ahead, I mean, the energy, for example, could very well speed up a development that has already been in the making.
Yeah. All right. So let's close maybe with the beginning, the direct border to Russia. For you, when you go to the office or something, like the Germans, we have some countries between the conflict and our borders. Is it scary to have these thoughts that there's a direct border to this conflict? Yeah, to the aggressor of the conflict.
Well, of course, I mean, we have a long border, and this is the geography that we have, and as I said, of course, we're looking at with concern on the conflict. Finland has a capable defense, and hopefully, the situation won't accelerate in any way. So.
Yeah. All right. So we hope for the peace for the people, so for the humanity, and we hope also that the market will not be that influenced as soon as we expect.
No,
so
very much so. Hoping for peace and definitely from a humanitarian perspective to get some kind of resolve from this suffering.
Yeah, peace on the first, and maybe the market on the second or third. Yeah, all right. Thank you very much, Fredrik von Knorring, Deputy CEO of Fondita. Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, Matthias. Thank you.
Yeah, greetings to Helsinki, I think.
Greetings to Hamburg.